So in this video, we're going to be looking at 5 techniques that Rivers Cuomo from Weezer uses in his guitar playing and his songwriting. We're going to get straight into this and we're going to look at number 1, which is arpeggiated chords. So what are arpeggiated chords? What it essentially means is rather than just strumming your chords, we're going to pick the notes within the chord. Now I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how we use this. The very first one is My Name is Jonas off their Blue album. So in My Name is Jonas, we actually start off in a C chord, but rather than just strum it, we're going to pick through the notes in the chord. So it sounds like this. So what he's essentially done there is he's picked 2 chords. We've got a C, and then we've got a G6 over B, or I kind of look at it as a G over B. But rather than just strum it, he's picking the notes in between. Like that, and it gives a really great effect mixed in with the time signature. It's not in 4/4, it's in a slightly different time signature. And then the second half of this riff, he actually starts on the A minor chord. We keep the picking pattern pretty similar, and then again he goes back to that G6 over B. Okay, so the chord progression is really C over the G over B, A minor over the G over B. But with the picking, gives it a much cooler effect in my opinion, rather than just strumming the chords out. So another example of when he used this, and it's littered through the first album, there's so many songs I could have chosen, but the second example I'm going to do is Surf Wax America. So all this is doing is outlining a chord progression again. So what you could do with your songwriting, you could just pick a more basic chord progression, maybe G to D, for example, but rather than just strum from G to D, okay, I'm trying not to make a rip off of Weezer, but that's just an example of what you can do with chords. You don't just need to strum it, you can arpeggiate, otherwise known as pick through the chords. And if you get bored of playing those normal open chords like G and D, you can maybe look into some extensions of those chords like Rivers did, and some of the slash chords as well. So that brings us into point number 2, which is the use of inverted power chords. Now this is super important for that early Blue album sound. So I'm going to describe inverted power chords like this, or the way they use it. So we're going to play a A and D power chord. Okay, so what I mean by that is you're going to place a finger on the A string and then a finger on the D string. And you can do this anywhere on the guitar neck. But what they do is they turn it into an inverted power chord. So to do this, that first finger is actually going to come up to the top string, then it's going to flatten a little bit. So for example, with the power chord I'm in at the moment, which is the 5th fret A and the 7th fret D, our D power chord, that first finger comes up and it's now going to be pressing down on the 5th fret of the lower E and the 5th fret of the A. The little finger stays where it is, and we get a much thicker sound. There's also an alternate way of playing it where you can use your 3rd finger. Okay, but really it's exactly the same. So this is it without the inverted power chord. And this is it with the inverted power chord. Okay. So that low E thickness that is then added in is part of what contributed to that thick sound on the Blue album, mixed in with the equipment they were using and also Matt Sharp's bass tone. So I'm going to give you some examples of where this was used. On the Blue album we have got the mega hit Buddy Holly, and it's actually used in the chorus. So I'm going to play part of the chorus for you now. Another great example of where it was used was in the garage from the Blue album. But really you could pick any song from the Blue album that's going to have these inverted power chords in it. Super important for their guitar playing and their songwriting. So now we're going to move on to number 3, which is the use of root notes in different sections of the song. So what do I mean by root note use? I'm just going to go straight into the example of the Sweater song. So we've got that intro. So these are quite exotic chords really, but we're looking out for the root note of the chord. So for the first one, the root note is G, then it comes down to the C, over to D, and back to C. So that's your intro, and it repeats several times and it just moves around those chords. So if we're in the key of G, that is the first, the fourth, the fifth, and then back to the fourth. Okay, so it uses first, the fourth, fifth, and back to the fourth. So that's the intro. But what he cleverly does is when it gets to the verse, he will go G, C, D, and C, just with our normal open chords, but you may have noticed the root notes are staying exactly the same. So he's essentially got two different sections from one chord progression or one progression of root notes. But what he does then is for the chorus, he's going to use those power chords and inverted power chords. And let me play it for you now and you can see what's going to happen. So for the chorus, he's using exactly the same root notes as the verse and the intro. So he uses those inverted root notes, but the sound really just replicates the G, the C, the D, and the C. That means he's now got three different sections of the song, and really pretty much most of the song there's a guitar solo and an outro, but the bulk construction of the song is just based around a G, C, D, and C. So another great example of this is Say It Ain't So, again off the Blue album. So we've got that intro, and we kind of do a hammer on, but we're outlining a C sharp minor 7 chord. So our root note is C sharp, then it goes up to a G sharp, then it goes to an A, and then finally an E. Okay, so that's our chord progression. Obviously we've got the hammer on at the beginning, there's some notes, and again, going back to our first point, we're arpeggiating some chords as well. But going back to the root note use, so that's our intro. So let's take a look at the verse. Okay, so now we're doing some triads on the G, the B, and the high E string. So we start off the C sharp minor triad. It's not quite a minor 7, but it's a C sharp. Then it moves to G sharp triad, moves to an A triad, and then finally, technically this isn't an E chord, it's a slash chord, but again it's outlining that E. He's got the intro, he's got the verse, and then let's take a look at the chorus. So for the chorus, you guessed it, C sharp, G sharp, A, and E. Again, another song where he's got three different sections of the song which all change but use the same root note. So this is one of the reasons why I think this album is great and really, really catchy and memorable, is because he will literally ram those root notes in those songs over and over, but he'll mix it up in between sections so it doesn't sound samey. So the fifth and final technique that he uses is key changes. So there's multiple different options I could have picked for this. You've got the Sweater song where it changes key for the guitar solo. You've also got Falling For You off of Pinkerton. There are multiple modulations in that. We're going to go with Across the Sea from Pinkerton. So the song starts in G major. I'm just going to play you the first chord progression. Okay, so nothing too much going on here. We've got a G, got B minor, to C, to D. Okay, so that's 1, 3, 4, and 5 progression. So it plays in G major all the way up to the guitar solo where it changes to E major. So G major and E major, what is the relation here? So the relative minor of G major is E minor. So they sound okay together. But what they actually use is the parallel major, which is E major. So if I play the G and then the E major now, a marked difference in the sound between those two chords compared to the G and the E minor. So how does this work? Well, let's delve into halfway in the bridge. So the bridge part sounds like this. And then that's the point where it's actually going to modulate back into G major. So now I'm going to play you that part again, but then going back into G major so you can see how smooth this transition is. I believe the reason for this key change is to make the final verse, which leads into the final chorus, much more impactful, which I think it does. So let's take a listen to the last chord of the bridge. So remember, we're in E major. Our last chord is F sharp minor. Okay, and then there's the key change into G. So F sharp minor. I absolutely love this key change and really love this song and album and band. So the last technique is the use of octaves on the D, the B string, and also the G and the high E string. So when I was first learning guitar, I didn't actually know these octaves really existed. I thought it was just on the A and the G. That's the most commonly used one. But on this album, it is absolutely littered with these octaves. For example, on the Buddy Holly solo, the use of octaves on these strings just sounded completely different to me, and I think it's a really clever songwriting technique that he used. So that has been 5 guitar techniques that Rivers Cuomo uses in his songs and his songwriting. So you could take these and apply it to your own songwriting, or you can just listen, analyze, watch the master at work for pop and rock hooks. Hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you did, click the like button, click the subscribe and the bell. That way you'll be notified each week when I upload a guitar lesson.